So welcome to Grow with Ryan Magic. I'm here with a beautiful soul today, Elisa Caro, who's a mentor of mine, a friend of mine, and someone that really embodies so many different modalities. But I really want to highlight that word embodiment. And so I'm really excited to have you here today and see where this discussion goes. Thanks. Thank you so much for jumping on.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. So I can't wait.
Awesome. So for those who are tuning in, whether you're watching or you're listening in, Elisa, like I said, has got such a vast understanding of personal development and spirituality, love and embodiment, but a really strong field of expertise is Tantra. And Tantra is usually referred to, or people, if they hear Tantra and they haven't fully gone into that field of study and embodiment, they would assume it means sex. Now, that's part of it, but I'd love for you to talk about, with all your knowledge and experience, what is the essence of Tantra in the way that you see it and understand it?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question. Thank you. I like it.
No worries.
So I think, Tantra is really a way of living.
Mm-hmm.
And my teacher defined it as a path towards enlightenment.
Beautiful.
And I really love this because, it's like just talking about the sex side is really diminishing what is the essence of it. And because in a way it does say yes to light in all its form. So it also includes sexuality, but it's not the main purpose.
Yes.
And somehow sexuality is seen as a spiritual practice. And so the highest goal in a way is to help us shifting our consciousness so that we can connect deeper with our soul, with our heart, and with the divine, however you would like to call it.
Yeah, then that brings up a really interesting kind of question that I have, or a topic to explore, which is that from my perspective, the depth and the extent to which you can love somebody really comes down to the depth and the extent to which you love and honor yourself. And I know you're a sexuality coach, and people would come in and be like, I want to improve my intimacy with my relationship. I want to improve my sex life. And I know from doing work with you, and you're a phenomenal coach, a really embodied leader from the experiential standpoint, like the embodiment and your ability to feel and perceive what's happening, but also from your intellectual understanding of personal development is one thing that I really admire about you. And I know that when you work with people, a lot of the time it's going to come back down to working with that individual and their own triggers and their own growth journey and their own sticking points. Could you speak to that, to the extent to which you see the importance of someone being able to love themselves, own themselves, and how that impacts relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. Love that question. I love your questions. So
awesome.
As you mentioned, I really feel strongly believe that the relationship we have with others, it's really influenced by the relationship we have with ourselves, and the depth we can reach in the sexuality with other people, and the feeling of love and emotional intimacy and connection is at least at the level that we have with them. It can't go deeper. And so I really value working on oneself. And often when clients come, they have a tendency of saying, of feeling that the source of problem or the lack of, like, the problem is on the outside.
Yeah.
So they will often want to, I don't know, kind of like pointing the finger outside. And so I usually kind of like tell them to turn the finger towards themselves and really look at the work that they can do in themselves.
Yeah, and I've experienced that. And I feel like going in and because you work with myself and my intimate partner, Danny. And I think the reason that a lot of the time the conversation gets and the feelings or the problems get reflected and projected onto the other person's intimate partner is because it's a really sensitive topic. And when people feel unsafe and feel scared, then they go into, it's very easy, then they have to take the pressure off them and the light off them. And one thing that I love about you, you've normalized and embodied and embraced complete openness in the way that you live your life. You are Elisa Caro, and you show up as yourself in all of your beauty, all of your radiance. You're just living as you. But in society, that's not actually that widely accepted to be that way, especially around topics that have stigmas like sexuality and sex and the human body and this area of life. And that's, as a reason, we've got a lot of trauma around sex. And so can you explain, because before, I'd love for you to explain how you would perfectly, how you would love to see sexuality operating in the world if you could just like wave a magic wand and just like, this is how sex is discussed, embraced, and intimacy as well. Like, how would you have it be? As like, if it could just be open and there was no societal stigmas, what would that world look like to you?
Okay, so wow, I'm envisioning like sexuality introduced at school, but like a deep, teaching it in a profound way. So not only like, here is a banana, how to put a condom on, here how you get STI, but kind of seeing it as a sacred and beautiful practice that we can do with oneself and with others, and really normalizing it. Because like teenagers are introduced to sexuality through pornography, which is a very limited view of how sexuality is, and very one-dimensional and more superficial. And so taught to kids, to teenagers as they're growing up, to embrace and embodying it in a sacred way and very respectful way, and not to be ashamed of their desire, because I see a lot of shaming of desires, and that's very sad. And I feel that instead of shaming it, the best would be to acknowledge any desire, and then teaching to teenagers, to kids, to people, to embody an alignment between their heart, their spirit, and their sexuality. So sometimes we have some desire that are mainly linked with our, I don't know, like DNA almost, reproduction. But because we also have a consciousness and we evolve, beyond that, then we can embody sexuality in a deeper way. We don't only have to follow these more biological needs, which are there, and I feel like they should be acknowledged and embraced and embodied, and not shame. And then one person can decide if they want to, whatever, go in that direction, if it's in alignment with other levels of their being. Instead of, what I see is that because there is so much shame, there is like a hiding, and often a feeling of being broken sexually, and confusion, and then kind of like repressing until then those needs come out in more like sneaky ways, or more like shadowy way, and in a more creepy way. So that's for like the education, I think. And
I would love to jump in there first, because there's so much to talk to, and then we can keep the conversation if we remember going. But that was so beautiful, and I really acknowledge the idea that whatever we suppressed will eventually be expressed, but unhealthily, if we're not giving permission to those desires and ultimate, just desires to be expressed. And it's seen as such a snaky topic in society, which is so crazy. But I still notice patterns of shame around sex within myself, and even in society. And this is kind of what I wanted to talk to, is this idea of like, how did society get this way? I feel as though it's obviously come from a need, the perceived need to control, and therefore, for example, if people were raping and pillaging, then wearing clothes and covering up and not giving people the chance to even see reproductive organs and then be like driven and feeling more desire. For me, if I don't see, like, desire gets triggered by certain things. If I see a girl that I'm really attracted to, it'll arouse desire within me. If I don't, then I won't. And so maybe it's like a suppression strategy or a control strategy. Because in the tribes, like when we were living in tribes, everyone's just walking around naked,
I know.
you know,
And
and it was normalized.
and I personally walk around naked in certain
Yeah.
communities, and people are making love when other people are playing with, whatever, tennis next to them.
Yeah.
And it's just like so freeing to see such an openness.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know if I could just go back in time and have a little look into the behavior of tribes people. I can imagine it would be similar to that, but it'd be normalized and embraced. I'm not 100% sure, but it definitely seems like society is formed and evolved in a way where rules have been put in place, and then we've become more and more closed off to avoid the potential big problem that of like raping, or I don't really know, but it seems like a control strategy. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
I think so. It feels like that sexual energy is very powerful.
Mm,
And if it's not um, embraced and embodied consciously, then it feels dangerous. And
yes.
so, from that perspective, I think that the feeling of this danger was what made Christianity to put so much stigma on it,
Yes.
and all of this repression. And
Mm,
it feels like in ancient cultures, such as where Tantra come from in India, or Taoism, or even shamanism, they all embody and embrace it more. So a few thousand of
mm,
years, but then it's kind of like feel these big waves a couple of thousand of years ago, a bit longer, of repression that kicked in.
mm,
And I'm feeling that now, as we are evolving more, we are capable of holding sexuality in a more conscious way. And it's happening. It's happening everywhere. When I was a kid, I
mm.
was raised with a dad who was very, like, had a long, big vision. And he introduced me to tantric meditations and stuff like that when I was a
Wow.
kid. Yeah, my dad and my mom
That's why
introduced
you're
me to
so
tantra.
embodied with it. It makes sense.
Makes sense.
And you practice, like you actually do the practices to help with your tantric energy. And
I absolutely do, and
yeah.
as I'm saying, like, since I was a kid, my porn would be like the Kama Sutra or the tantric ritual that I could find in the books of my parents,
Yeah.
and so that's how I've been introduced to it, and it feels very it feels very different. Despite I have to say that I also took on so much from society. So
Yeah. Well, what I would love to explore next,
mm,
and the reason, so what I would like to explore next is what depth in intimacy actually looks like, because I'm going to be 100% honest. Before I was introduced to Tantra through doing work with you and having some mentorship with you and practices that you prescribed to me, I didn't know what it could feel like to do sexual practices in any other way than what I was taught or exposed to through porn and through what mainstream society would say sex is about, which is more of the physical act and the surface way. I didn't understand the circulation of life force energy. And the really interesting thing is, once I actually understood it and was embodying it and embracing it, because there was an expression of the sexual desire and there wasn't the suppression, I didn't even really desire doing things that would be as shadow like, because there was the embodying and the embracing of the sexual energy in a more healthy way. So what you're saying in terms of educating people of what it can look like from a young age to have a healthy sexuality and healthy healthy sexuality within you, with others, and just energy within your body, that makes a lot of sense as to how in this society it's possible. This vision of being able to have sex, sexuality, tantric energy, love, life force energy as something that we actually do have, can have a healthy relationship with, and don't need to control, suppress, etc. I've experienced what it feels like to have the regulation of it, and therefore could see how as a society we could function healthier. by changing that up. But if people are listening and watching this now, I know for a fact that some people won't even know what it could look like to experience sexuality in a non-physically focused, as the main focused way. Can you explain, and I'll try to kind of like shape in and give extra examples and stuff, what most people would say sexuality is like, and then what it can actually be like and feel like, and as a when it's being embraced in a more conscious way.
Absolutely. So I feel that from what we perceive it from society is more focus on achieving an orgasm,
Yes.
of going through like an agenda. So there is, let's say for heterosexual couple, let's just give an example for heterosexual couple, but that goes beyond that. It's like
Yes.
kissing, taking the clothes off, maybe some petting, then penetration, 5, 10, 15 minutes, ejaculation, done.
Yes.
And it's kind of like there is this agenda, and there is so much focus, as I said, about the orgasm. And there is a lot of focus on performance, also how we look like, very self-conscious about sounds we make, movement we make, if they are accepted on the view of society, on sexuality. And and so I
would say as a guy as well, a lot of things that would come up when we're talking about, oh, I slept with this girl, and it's like, did she come? Did she orgasm? Like, how many times did she orgasm? How long did you last? And there's all these like metrics and stats and results. It's so funny when you actually have the experience of a more conscious way of making love, how ridiculous those ideas are as the primary focus. But that's very much what comes up as well in just normal boys talk growing up. Porn, what were her tits like? Just all that, like, it's all surface and it's all performance. It's all looks and performance.
That's what like society says, that's what's important. Like most people, when they come to me, they don't reach an orgasm, or they want to last longer. Everything is about performance. And of course, through the journey we do, that happens.
Better, right?
Much beyond. And let me describe a little bit tantric sexuality, because it was your initial question. So
absolutely. And this is what's most important. So if you're listening, like, really tune in and see if you can feel into what it might be like and what's possible if you haven't yet explored Tantra.
So tantric sexuality, it feels like, first of all, there is an activation of all the layers of our being. And by saying that, there is the physical body is involved, but there is also a sensation that go beyond. So like shivering or heat or like electricity flowing, and that's how energy feels. So we activate also our energetic body, and that add the layer of pleasure and depth. And then we are very present with our mind. So the mind is in the moment. So there is activation of the mental body, but in a way, in the present, not thinking, how do my tits look like? Am I going to last long? Is she going to come? Am I going to make a weird sound? Or is this sound okay? So the mind is present. Our emotional body is activated. And by that, I mean we feel connected to ourselves primarily, and to our beloved or lovers, partners, whoever we are engaging sexually with.
Is there a way that you can describe, like a metaphor or an example, when someone might feel connected outside the bedroom that they could refer to?
Yeah, like the feeling of great, the feeling of falling in love. When you're like, you have this softness, this openness, like this optimism about life. When someone is falling in love, you just see them spark, right? They're sparkling.
They're shining. Yeah.
They're shining. And so that we often in this society, that's the only moment in which we allow ourselves to open ourselves to love.
Yes.
And through Tantra, we try to have this openness more and more. And so that's the feeling you're having as you're making love. And it's not only when, like you're in a relationship, long-term relationship with someone. I have experienced this sense of expansion and love also with a partner who I had few sexual experience with. Of course, if they were like open to meet me there. And to be honest, in the last few years, I've not been wanting to engage sexually with someone if they didn't want to meet me at that level of depth of connection of the heart.
Yes.
And what I say to my clients when I teach them about, tantric sexuality, I'm saying often to men, but also like other genders, people are going to start to fall more in love. And the point is, because you're more open in your heart, you're helping them opening their heart, but they're projecting on you that. And actually what their experience is just their self open. And tantric sexuality really helps that, because also through moving energy, that can move through the energy centers, and that can help us to open our energy channel, which in turn might help us feeling emotionally more open and more connected to one another.
So to kind of like recap that, when you're more vulnerable and open and expressive, and your heart's more open, and you're making love to someone that maybe hasn't experienced that before, and they've kind of felt insecure or uncomfortable or nervous or distracted in their mind, and you come into that sexual experience, that intimacy, with an open heart and lots of presence and nothing but love, so there's non-judgment and there's just this connectedness and union, that therefore gives them permission to also engage in the same thing, and that makes them feel this sense of, wow, this is different, but wow, this feels so nice, and they feel so connected, and they're like, wow, this is amazing. I kind of
And I
yeah,
want to add
please.
something,
Yeah.
that it's possible if the other person is open to receive that initiation.
Yes.
So it's not like, okay, you got the magic wand and you can do this with everyone. You're kind of like holding this space in which you offer this initiation to other people you sleep with, if you're embodying it. But if the other person want to meet you there, they can.
Yes.
But if the other person is a no, then you can be as open as you want, but that connection will not happen, and you cannot force other beings, and that's okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A metaphor that popped up for me, I'd love to hear your feedback, it feels quite accurate for me, is when you get into personal development initially, or spiritual development, you start improving your life and get into this self-growth kind of mindset where you're like, you know what, I want to get more out of life. And you may have a friends group who engage in more small talk, and they might, pay each other out a little bit with some put downs and talk about more surface layer things. And then once you experience greater depth and you're like, wow, there's actually, I want to have DNMs all the time. When I go back to this kind of small talk stuff, it doesn't do what it used to. That was all I thought relating used to be. And now when we're talking about improving ourselves and there's vulnerability and I feel supported by someone else, it's a different layer of relating experience. And once you experience, for me at least, I don't have anyone in my circle of close friends that I can't connect deeply with. And that's over 10 years of being in personal development. But I can experience something. Like, I couldn't just go into a sexual experience and just be like, bang, 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 bang. Like I couldn't do that again, because it's just like, I'm never going to go back to that and just pretend that depth doesn't exist and vulnerability doesn't exist and love and care and support and nurture doesn't exist in a relating experience with somebody else.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Totally agree. Also totally resonate with what you said. Like growing up, I did have some, close friends who were more like small talk and stuff. And I feel in the past years, as I go through self-development, I open up much more, and that doesn't make it for me anymore. Same for sex. So,
well, the sort of things that you do with your friends are Ketan, which is like sing-alongs, embodied dancing, a camping trip in nature, these kind of things. Whereas a lot of people, their catch-up experience will be like, let's catch up, but instead of like, so we don't have to hit the intimacy, let's make sure we kind of like put a wall up by getting drunk or smashed and that kind of thing. And then we don't have to actually see that depth or acknowledge things that may not have been spoken about, or really surrender our walls. It's the opposite relating experience. What I would really love to explore more, to give people a more vivid understanding of what sexuality can be like, so they can imagine it more, because it's very, from my experience, if I hadn't engaged and experienced it myself, everything we've gone through so far, even though it's been amazing and really accurate, it's not, I still wouldn't fully understand what the experience can be like. And so I'd
Yeah,
love to give like a little example of how pleasure has changed for me. And I'd love for you to then comment to that and give some other examples. So
absolutely.
Elisa had prescribed to me a self-pleasure practice, which essentially means masturbation. And instead of masturbating to porn or visualization of what I would be physically attracted to, there's other prompts to give me the feeling of pleasure in my body that actually makes me aroused and erect and feeling pleasure in my body, which is breathing. So like breathing and sighing, listening to nice music at the same time, actually moving my body and squeezing certain muscles in my body, my PC muscles, and then this visualization of energy being put throughout my body. And it's kind of like a practice of self-pleasure that's not just, okay, cool, I want, because what masturbation used to mean to me is ejaculation. It's like a stress release. It's like, I'm going to look at some hot chicks or visualize some hot chicks or have sexual intercourse with my partner. We're going to have sex and then I'm going to ejaculate and then I'm going to feel like a release. And then when I've started doing this self-pleasure practice and a lot of breathing, a lot of visualization, moving through the body, it's like, and also pleasuring myself sexually, masturbating, but without the ejaculation, I'm feeling the pleasure, but it's being extended, and I'm actually taking that excitement away from just my genitals and moving it throughout my body, so that that same pleasure that was just focused straight in my lingam or my penis is actually being put throughout my body, and I'm experiencing that full pleasure, and that in itself is like usually what in a sexual experience lasts for like 5, 10, 15 minutes. But that same experience gets extended. And I can actually, with no physical stimulus, no fantasy, no visualization, no porn, get really excited in my body and feel really connected to myself without needing just the surface layer things at all. And it feeling amazing in my body. So that's like what my experience has been. I'd love for you to, talk to that and how that's different and give people even greater depth of understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your experience. I love it.
No worries.
And
Thank you for giving me the experience.
and I would say that tantric sexuality, as we were saying before, it activates different layers of our being. Through moving energy, we can feel pleasure throughout the whole body. Mm-hmm. And we also feel touch in our emotions, so we feel more connected. All our body feels an instrument of pleasure. So it's almost like our genital have expanded, and there is a sense of ecstasy and bliss that come as well with it. Moreover, when we start to really move the energy, we start to shift our consciousness. And for, on the practical level, if we want to talk more like how sexuality is usually talked to,
yeah, please.
Women, might go from a more clitoral orgasm and really focus around the genitals to having multiple orgasms. I've recently just made a YouTube video of the 9 types of female orgasms. And
exciting.
yeah, so release, very soon. And so it's, like women can activate so much more pleasure within. And it's not this kind of like release, because the energy is flowing. So it's a full body experience. And I also want to say that this is kind of like when we feel, all the pleasure and it's amazing. But in a way, Tantra really embodies sexuality as a healing and profound experience. So it have happened for me that I'm starting to engage in a sexual experience with my partner. Instead of feeling pleasure and noticing some tension or some contraction in my yoni, which is the Sanskrit for vagina. And what in the past I would do, I would keep going and tense up a little bit and just suck it up and maybe it will go away. And what I'm doing now, I will have maybe a little ritual or a healing massage to release that tension. Or I might go into some emotional release. And these in turn would help me feeling more pleasure in the future. But just for saying that when we start to engage in tantric sex, that doesn't mean that all the time is that like it's always the most pleasurable thing, but we're always
Yes.
real. So we always will go back to that in a way. But we
Yes.
want to be present with what's here. So we don't have an attachment, an agenda. And sometime I start to make love with my partner and it become a tantric massage and healing experience. Or we
Yes.
become a genital worshiping because we feel disconnected from our genitals. And that's tantra, and that's sacred sexuality, and that's embodying it in its fullest, not only to receive the pleasure, but to really honoring that energy.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think this is such a great time to talk about the benefits of this. And because you've just touched on a real deep, profound benefit. And I really feel like it's actually similar to transcendental or Vedic meditation in the sense that people will go to do tantric meditation, people will go to do Vedic meditation or some kind of meditation to ease the problem of stress. But ultimately what they're gaining is energy. But then what the deeper benefit is that they're expanding the power of their mind, the function of the mind known as the witness, which gives them awareness over their own stretch points. It creates space for gaps or traumas to come to the surface, things that can create opportunity for them to evolve, to come to the surface. And that awareness is the stronger, in my opinion, it is the deeper benefit. And people go to meditate because they want to feel bliss, but all the time what it does is it brings up crap and to the surface, which gives you the chance to heal it and then become more whole within yourself, more confident, more strong, more open, more loving, more powerful, all of these beautiful benefits so that you're a more full person and more fulfilled. And people would come to learn Tantra so they have a better sex life. But then ultimately they're just learning what a beautiful metaphor of being the real, raw, authentic, vulnerable, truthful version of yourself in the most open and vulnerable space that you'll be, completely there naked, merging with another human. You're completely seen. And if you can be completely seen, open, honest, and authentic in that situation, then when you go to embrace a business, like go to a business meeting, and someone says something you disagree with, instead of holding on to it, you're like, hang on a second, I cried last night during lovemaking because that's what came up for me. And now I can at least give my honest perspective in this business meeting. Or if I'm on a sales call, or if I'm doing a video, you can bring vulnerability because you're embracing authenticity in the most vulnerable way and the most vulnerable time. I think it's super powerful for building of confidence and self-worth and self-expression.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, what you said. I think it's very, very important to be authentic, to be real. And as you said, people come to learn how to last longer, how to unlock orgasms, and that, it's going to happen. But most of the time, through learning that, as you said, we expand our awareness and our connection. And as we do that, we also need to feel unpleasant emotion, past trauma, or tension, contraction, limiting belief, doubts that we have on ourselves, on our sexuality, that we took in growing up in our upbringing. And so we really need to face it all. And so when clients come, I'm like, yes, and the path is going to be challenging at times, and that's okay. It's part of the healing. So like, when clients come to my session, I'm like, here, you're emotional welcome, because most likely you're going to cry or feel upset. If not today, the next meeting. And that's part of the healing, because we cannot just numb the unpleasant. When we numb ourselves, we numb the pleasant and the unpleasant. And so to reach this bliss, we also need to feel the crap that in the past we avoid. But the good news is that in general, the crap is like a wave. So when it's like a tunnel, like when we go through the tunnel, then there is the other side.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the other way, when we hold on to it, we never release it. So we are kind of like be okay, but in a more surface level, and we can't have this connection in depth.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really profound. And what I was thinking before, what came up was there's a lot of expectations when it comes to lovemaking. That's why people would come to see you, especially if they came as couples. Hey, I've got this problem in the relationship. I want more of this. And if someone goes into a sexual experience with a very specific agenda and expectation, the other person doesn't want to disappoint. So I can imagine that's what causes, if it, let's say, for example, one scenario I'll give, but there'll be heaps. If a man went in and says, I want you to orgasm so I feel confident and strong and like I'm getting the job done and I'm performing. And then the woman's like, oh no, I'm in my head. I've got to orgasm. I got to sound this way. I got to look this way. Then they're mega in their head. And then the guy feels disappointed. And then the girl's like, well, I don't want to disappoint him. I'm going to like make noise and I'm going to try to put it on. It's becoming less and less authentic. And there's less and less of an open discussion about the truth of what's going on, which would cause more and more fakeness and more separation. What would your advice be for people to start to go from more of a surface layer sexual relationship to starting to create more depth and true intimacy in the relationship?
Yeah, so in relationship, because you mentioned that, I would say that
Yeah.
the first step would be to actually acknowledge what we're at and discuss if we have the same intention and the same direction. Like, hey, it's hard, it's humbling to say it, but I have to say that I've been faking orgasm, or I'm feeling less attracted to you lately, or whatever. Like, really being honest and being willing both to acknowledge, so they can both work on it if they want to work on the relationship and sexuality in the relationship.
Yeah.
And
That's huge, by the way. That'd be really difficult and take a lot of courage to do. Do you have any tips around how to create a safe space to share the truth of where you're at from each person's perspective?
yeah, I would say that you mentioned before, honesty and vulnerability really help. And I would say that, just checking in with the other partner, hey, I would like to have a really honest and vulnerable conversation about our sexuality. I'm aware that that could be challenging, but would you be willing to try to hold a space as least judgmental as you can, like dropping judgment as much as you can, dropping the taking it personal as much as you can, and I will do the same, and together we will do our best to create this safe container in which we can discuss this. So going in with the intention to do our best to take it least personal, and to make the space safe. Yes. And not judgmental, as the best of our capabilities. That doesn't mean that no judgment will come in, or no, if my partner is telling me, oh yeah, lately I've been feeling stressed and I've been desiring watching more porn or stuff like that. If that happened, like, I will have a reaction, but I'm not going to feed on that, and just acknowledging what's happening. Okay, what can we do? Because sexuality in relationship isn't like, we work on it as we go. I'm personally with my partner since 3 years. It's not like we've been married 10 years or something, but still our sexuality it's very beautiful, and we keep working on it.
Yes.
We keep deepening, being honest, have difficult conversations. And so, yeah, that was my advice for.
Yeah, beautiful. So vulnerability and pre-framing that it's going to be a challenging conversation, but I'd like it to go both ways as well.
Yes.
Just doing your best to acknowledge that challenges will come up, but let's be resilient, and let's do our best to focus on coming together as a result of it.
Yeah,
cool.
And in a way, like, if you want to work on a sexuality in a relationship, you kind of like need both people willing to do the work. And also, if just one person wants to do the work, that doesn't stop them, because they can work on their sexuality, which will change the dynamic in the relationship.
Yes.
And that will change drastically anyway the relationship they have with their own sexuality. So yeah.
So if someone's listening and they know their partner is a little bit nervous when it comes to sexuality, can be triggered by sexuality, doesn't feel like it isn't super open and freeing in that area, and isn't really wanting to engage in it per se straight away to improve together, you can still start to improve your own sexuality and your own openness, and that will in turn kind of like what you were talking about earlier. If you bring openness and vulnerability and heart connection to a sexual experience, it gives other people, the other person, permission to do the same. It creates the opportunity. It's not going to guarantee it, but it's going to make it more safe for the other person to do it as well.
Yeah. And anyway, the person that works on it will have the benefit for themselves.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. That's really beautiful. What for you is like your favorite part of Tantra? What excites you the most? What do you love the most about Tantra for where you're at, just purely for you?
Yeah. With Tantra as a philosophy, so not just talking about the sexuality part,
Yeah,
I would
anything.
say that is the fact that spirituality is lived, is a living experience. Like everything is considered
Mm,
sacred, and any opportunity is considered sacred because it's a portal to expand our awareness.
mm,
And so there is not, like God is there and we are here and we have to suppress some side of ourselves. It's kind of like embracing it all.
mm.
And there is not this dichotomy in a way,
Yeah. I kind of really feel that to be true. It's a really big intention of mine to bring sacredness to seemingly menial day-to-day practices or activities or actions. Because for me, and if anyone that's listening is like more achieve success, drive, I'm a man, even if you're a dude that's listening, it's like this seems very wishy-washy, because it does and seem that way if you haven't engaged in it. But if you look at the masculine archetypes, even the king, warrior, magician, and lover, the lover archetype, to be a embodied king and to have that humility and vulnerability and to be able to lead, you need to be embracing fulfillment and connectedness. And that lover archetype is all about, like, Tantra really epitomizes for a man the lover archetype. And if you're missing that, all three other archetypes, so you got the king, which is like, can be summarized with leadership, the magician that can be summarized with decision making and wisdom and knowledge, and you got the warrior, can be summarized with action and courage. You might be like, I just like those, but I don't like the lover. If you don't have the lover through those, embedded and woven throughout those other archetypes, and you're missing and suppressing that part of yourself, it's going to be being expressed in an unhealthy way with passive aggression, desiring short-term gratification. Like, you might be like, I've got this, at the end of every day, I have to smash a bunch of chocolate, or I'm drinking, or I need a cigarette, or I want to watch porn. And that makes you weaker. That ultimately makes you weaker because you're not acknowledging all of you, including that lover energy, that lover archetype. And that's like the big, I really feel like, for me personally, and it'd be different for everyone, but having a self-pleasure practice where I'm allowing and giving permission for a feeling of pleasure in my body, when I'm doing that regularly, and I don't always, sometimes I'm like too busy to do my self-pleasure practice, but when I do it, it makes it so much, I don't crave, I don't get addicted to things as much, because I'm not suppressing my innate right, birthright, and part of myself that enjoys pleasure.
Thanks for saying this. And I have to say that I have so many clients who are quite, successful men, and they feel, as you mentioned, that either something is missing or they feel that addiction or that attachment and they don't want it. And now that they have, the success and the career they want, plus they're also feeling a deeper meaning in their life, sexually and beyond that, they feel like a fucking powerhouse. But not only on the surface level, but really deep.
Yeah. There's one, thank you for saying that. And it's true. I've experienced it as well. If I do a self-pleasure practice, and I can even have, like, because it does take an element of discipline not to ejaculate, especially at the start when you're breaking an addiction of short-term gratification and ejaculate. I feel powerful because I've got more energy surging through my body. There's more testosterone surging
Yeah.
through my body, and I'm more fierce, powerful, ready to go. Like, yeah.
On this note, I think we talked so much about no ejaculation, but let's give just a brief note of what it is. So Tantra is a big fan of keeping this sexual energy in,
Yes.
utilize it for anything. So it could be spiritual awakening, it could be work, it could be your career. You know, you can send it whatever you want, and you become also more charismatic, more energetic when you have that within instead of spreading it. So most men probably have experienced that when they ejaculate, there is a loss of desire, but also a relaxation, but also a loss of like less energy.
Yes.
And if they don't ejaculate for a while, they feel a bit like nervous and can get a bit tense. But when you allow this energy to flow, self-pleasure, love-making, breath work, yoga, many practices, then you just feel all this energy within.
Yes.
And so tantric men can develop energy orgasms and no ejaculation. So they have multiple orgasms, but they don't have that loss of energy. They don't lose their semen as often. Of course, they ejaculate, but it's like less often. So I think that will clarify a little bit what's about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super helpful. And I'm going to like you give like a real specific example of this, or like really summarize it. If you're making love to your partner, and you're a man and you're making love, and for your partner as well, but I'm going to speak more specifically for men because of the ejaculation of semen, then when you're in that lovemaking process, how crazy is the energy? It's just surging through your body. You're like, if you're having a really passionate engagement and intimate experience, you know, you guys are rolling around the room, jumping up, like throwing each other around. It's like this crazy wild. It's like, but then before that, you just might be sitting on the couch. It's like, and then all this energy is surging through your body. But then when you ejaculate, I don't know, but for me, it's like it's like I'm just passed out on the bed afterwards. It's like, now I'm dead. All that energy's gone. But then when I'm actually practicing self-pleasure, that energy that we can all relate to when we're in a really intimate, passionate sexual experience is created in the body, but it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't just, you don't get that, I'm dead after. It actually stays in the body, and then you carry that into the day. And then if you do that every day, you're recreating that energy, but it's not escaping the body. You're building it up, keeping it there, building it up, keeping it there. And then when you can ejaculate, it's not that you just never ejaculate. You just ejaculate. You won't ejaculate every time you have a pleasurable sexual experience. But it's been huge for energy. And this is something that can only be, there's no point just listening to the theory here. It's something that you actually have to try yourself. It's something that you have to actually ejaculate and then see how you feel. How's your energy for the next day? How's your energy for the day after? How's your energy for the day after? Ejaculate again. How's your energy for the day after? And then try not ejaculating for a week, but self-pleasuring every day, or having sex 3 days of the week and then and then self-pleasure 4 days of the week, but no ejaculation. And then how's your energy different? And then only then, when you have that contrast, will you actually see and feel the power of the energetic power of not ejaculating and building the life force energy within.
Yes. And on the female perspective, because we talk so much about the
please.
So on the female perspective, I feel that by unlocking so many different types of orgasm, there is a level, when energy flows, there is a level of radiance that is like embodied. So this is this aliveness and radiance. And yes, there is also more energy, because of course, men, women, any gender, is about keeping this energy in. But what I see in tantric women is that there is this embodied of radiance and aliveness that they have throughout every age. And that's very beautiful, that this is not lost. Yeah,
it's so attractive from a man's perspective, or from anyone that's attracted to women. It's so attractive. It's just, you can sense and feel that energy. It's almost like pheromones are being released or something, and you're just being like magnetized towards it, because there's smiling, there's laughter. And for a man, if a woman's like big smiling, you know, really embracing that goddess within, it's so attractive for a man. But then, and I've heard this with David Dieter before, talk about the 3 levels of kind of femininity from a sexual perspective. There's like level 1, which is, you know, I'm just having sex all the time, but it's in more of a, I'm doing it to receive. I'm using my sexuality to manipulate or to get, because I need that hit, or I need attention, or look at me, and they're kind of like walking around with their tits out all everywhere, which is fine, but it's coming from a place of I then want to get. And then the level 2 is like level 2 sexual expression from feminine energy is like, well, I'm going to cover that up, and I'm a smart, strong businesswoman, and that, you know, that's like a suppression. And then level 3 is, well, I can be smart, strong, sexual, and expressive, and it's that sexuality, sexual energy that's being put out there, but it's from a place of I want to give to the world. I want my radiance to fill the world up and fill, like I want to make people's days, and it's coming from a real giving place, not like a giving, like a try to get, take kind of energy. And that's what popped in my mind when you said that radiance. It's so true from a man's perspective.
Thanks for the example. I really like it. I really like that distinction as well. And I have to say that I've been through all the 3 phases.
Yeah.
I've been through like more teenager, hey, look at my titties. And then to like be a civil engineer and very like, hey, I'm smart, and I'm, you know, and like go to construction side and stuff, and really like repressing my sensuality because I want to be seen for my brain. And now like, yeah, sex and relationship coach, and kind of like radiating more out. Yeah, you
really are embodied with that, because you do have such a beautiful radiance, but you also have a lot of intelligence that you express, and there's a really nice balance. That's what I said to, I'm not sure whether I said it to you, but I said it to Danny when we had our first coaching session with you. You were just so intelligent in the way that you were coaching, and so embodied from a like a goddess kind of energy. It's really balanced and really embodied. So great role model.
Thanks.
Cool. Well, I've had an absolute blast on this interview. I'd love to do more. But before we wrap up, I'd like to, first, I've got one more question for you. But before I give you that question and try to get even more gold from you today, I want to acknowledge you, because you are such an amazing role model. And I just wanted to create space to really allow you to know what a beautiful light worker you are in the world. And I know anyone that's listening to the podcast today or watching it would definitely have felt your authenticity and your desire to give. And when I spoke about like, what would the world look like for you in terms of sexual dynamics and tantric energy, what would the world look like for you? And you went straight to contribution of changing the way that the world operates to being more free and open and authentic and loving. And then before we even jumped on the podcast and we're doing intention setting, you said like one of your intentions is to evolve and awaken humanity through the interview today. So the amount that you want to give is just so beautiful. And I just want to say thank you for being you, and thank you for coming on today. And I know it'll mean the absolute world to Elisa if you're watching this, if they just add you or follow you on Instagram and send you a message of how this, any follow-up questions or how this interview has impacted them, or it always means the world to me. So what's your Insta handle for people to follow you and send you a message?
Yeah, so it's Elisa, ELISA, __ and Caro, CARO.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. But Elisa __ Caro.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the acknowledgement. And I would love to hear from you. So yes, if you're hearing this podcast and you have questions, or like in a month's time, you want to tell me how this impact you, I will love to hear from you. Absolutely.
Amazing. And so my last question for you is, if you could go back to a young version of Elisa before going on the experience of exploring your own growth journey and evolving your consciousness, let's call it Elisa version 1, who was showing her titties to the world. If you could go back to that version of you and give any piece of advice of how to approach your life or journey, like what would be the most valuable piece of advice you could give to yourself?
Yeah, I would tell my young Elisa that it's not all about career and how we look and how many friends you have, how much money you make, or how high are your grades at school or uni, but the life has a really deeper meaning. And I would ask her, what did you came on this planet to do? Like, what's your mission? What's, like, really focus on that more than, yeah.
Beautiful. And it's really cool to see that you actually really embody that now.
Yes.
Like you're actually there. You know, most people go through their whole lives without actually getting to the point where they've given to themselves enough that they can overflow with that contribution. And you're embodying that at such a high level. And I also want to acknowledge you for being so open. I feel like it's really liberating. I know the people listening into today, there was a lot of vulnerability. There was a lot of like direct, open communication around sex, penises, vaginas, titties, like all this open conversation. But it's normalizing something that is natural. And I really, you know, I find it fun first and foremost, but I think it's so important and valuable to not feel that shame. And I think just by having this open, honest conversation, that we've really hopefully inspired people and given permission to start seeing this area of your life as something that you deserve, and something that is completely okay to talk about, and is a normal part of life, and it's a special part of life.
Yes, yes, yes.
Woo! Awesome. What a note to end on. So thank you so much for joining us, Elisa, and I can't wait to have you on again in the future.